into Live with Lighthouse, the show where we guide you to the technology and talent solutions to drive your business forward. I'm your host, Joe Ray. Excited to have everyone back here with us on this Friday morning. It's been a really great week here at Lighthouse and really excited for a great conversation to cap off the week here. Wanted to send a quick shout out to Claire Stroh, who's our manager of talent managed services at Lighthouse. Claire is a past Live with Lighthouse guest where she talked about some of the new salary transparency laws in New York State, and recently was featured in an article with Matt Glynn from the Buffalo News talking about that exact topic and some best practices for employers. So head over to our Lighthouse LinkedIn page and make sure to check that out later today. Really excited coming off of yesterday's annual meeting with the Buffalo Niagara Partnership as well. We talked a lot about the Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse Regional Tech Hub designation and what that means for the future of our region too. A lot of exciting conversation to come from that. And I'm really glad that we have our guest today who can speak to a little bit of those business attraction initiatives as well. So I'm going to bring up Greg here. Greg is the communications manager with Invest Buffalo Niagara and Be in Buffalo. Greg, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, glad we could have you on the show today. And why don't you start off just introducing yourself to the audience here and tell us a little bit about your work and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Greg Pokriki, comms manager for Invest Buffalo Niagara. Born and raised here in Buffalo. Went away to college in Rochester for a few years and then came back for this opportunity with Invest Buffalo Niagara to kind of help tell the story of this great resurgence that we're all feeling here on the ground and make sure that other people really across the country are aware of all the great stuff happening in Buffalo. So for those that don't know, Invest Buffalo Niagara is the region's nonprofit economic development organization focused on attracting new businesses to Western New York. In 2019, we started to realize the demand that there was for mid and high skilled talent attraction. So we launched the Be in Buffalo campaign under that Invest Buffalo Niagara umbrella. So Be in Buffalo is the region's talent attraction initiative that I head up, and is focused a lot more on individuals and getting people to move back here to, fill so many of the open jobs that we all know and you talk about on the show every week.
Yeah, it's really a flywheel that goes together, and we'll get into it a little bit, like you mentioned there, of attracting businesses and then attracting the talent that's going to lead those businesses and drive change in our community too. Really goes hand in hand. So there's a lot of work that goes on with you and your team and a lot of your community partners as well. One other thing I like to ask all our guests at the start of the show, what part of your work inspires you the most?
Yeah, I say it all the time. I think that we get to see Buffalo at its best. We get to see all of the hard work and collaboration and partnerships and like really difficult problem solving type of stuff that happens behind the scenes before you get to the big, ribbon cutting where we're holding gold scissors or a gold shovel. So to me, it's the people in Western New York, and that'll be, I'm sure, a common theme throughout all of your episodes, and especially this one, is we get to see how committed people are to this region and how bought in they are to this resurgence and the kind of skin in the game that everybody has to be able to push Buffalo forward and, make it what we all know that it can be. And I think we're well on the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so much that goes into that too. It's definitely a different conversation too when you're talking about attracting businesses and selling them on the vision of expanding to a region like Buffalo, as opposed to a more personal conversation when you're talking about someone relocating their family, relocating their life to the Buffalo Niagara region. So really excited to dig into both of those. Maybe we start on the business side though. Invest Buffalo Niagara obviously works with a lot of companies who are looking to expand and, looking at Buffalo as a place that's, really centrally located in the Northeast, the proximity to Canada. I imagine all of those are pretty big factors. What are some of the motivators that you and your team hear when you're talking to businesses that are considering moving to a place like Buffalo?
Yeah, so we work with companies across 5 different, what we call targeted industries: advanced manufacturing, advanced business services, which is really like your tech and back office type operations, agribusiness and food processing, life and health sciences companies, and logistics companies. So, across those industries, there's a ton of different reasons and business cases why they would move to Western New York. You mentioned a few. We're really centrally located. 60% of the binational population is within a 10-hour drive of Western New York. So you're really kind of strategically located to a lot of customers or talent. It's a low-cost operating environment. We have a history of rich manufacturing that, we're really well known for, and that legacy within our workforce as well. So there's a ton of different reasons. To me, the common thread is the talent and the people, and we hear that all the time. We did a piece on CNN a couple of days ago, and there was a great quote that I'll echo here. The individual said, "It's about the attitude, not the latitude." And when you get here, you really start to feel the friendliness of the individuals in Buffalo, and holding the door open for each other. And we're talking to people from across the country and across the world. It sounds cliche, but that really isn't the case everywhere, and people are surprised by it and obviously interested in it. So to me, the people is kind of the common thread through all of them, but there's different economic drivers and business cases that we can build depending on the company and industry.
I love that. I'm definitely borrowing that line too and preaching that everywhere, that it's about the attitude, not the latitude, which kind of plays into something else that comes up in a lot of conversations I have with people, whether they're new to Buffalo, moving their business, or if they're visiting from out of town. It's very much an attitude of like, we know how great Buffalo is because we're in it. We see a lot of that attitude every single day. It's tough to communicate that without someone actually being here, right? So obviously that being part of your job, I'm really curious, what does that look like for you and your team, telling those stories of people who are in Buffalo, of businesses who are moving here? What's that experience like?
Yeah, it's kind of like two sides to the coin, like you said, right? Like, it's really tough to feel the vibe of a place without being on the ground and being here. We all know how special Buffalo is, but how do you communicate that feeling, which, in some ways is the challenges of my job as the communications manager and of our organization, Invest Buffalo Niagara. So, there's quantifiable arguments that we can make on the economic side about the low-cost operating environment and some of those type of things. But really, it's, to me, capturing the stories of the people, the individuals that have made the choice to call Buffalo home and have seen the success that comes with that, whether it's for their business or their life personally. So to me, and in our kind of marketing world, it's all about telling those individual stories across, different mediums, whether it's our blog, video, social media, but trying to capture the essence of Buffalo through the people that, give it that essence itself.
Mm-hmm. And you do a great job of that too, really highlighting a lot of different parts of the region. Are there any kind of stories that have stood out to you as far as some of those kind of the hyper personal stories of someone who moves to Buffalo and has a really incredible experience that maybe they weren't expecting?
Yeah, we've seen a ton of success with the climate change refuge pitch that we've done a ton of work on through Invest Buffalo Niagara and Be in Buffalo on the national PR front. So we recently did a story that I just mentioned on CNN, an individual that moved to Buffalo after Hurricane Maria from Puerto Rico, kind of settled here in Buffalo and has since made it their home. And it's those type of stories specifically to me that, one, obviously the first negative that gets hurled our way is our weather, right? So how do you take a perceived weakness and turn it into a strength? Well, if Buffalo is a climate change refuge and our climate and weather can be a pro, that's obviously perfect ammunition to kind of fight like that negative storyline and negative perception that we always deal with. But really, like, the kind of personal story of someone in that individual's case fleeing like devastation where they were, in a climate change world, those kind of natural disasters, are said to be happening more frequently. So Buffalo being well protected from them is a really, to me, like a potent story, personal story. And I think one that resonates with a lot of people really across the country, especially in the South and West Coast and, really everywhere.
Yeah. It's an interesting conversation too, that you look at really the entirety of the region and what it has to offer, and how prevalently something like weather comes into that when you're talking about attracting a family to move here, maybe from a warmer climate or somewhere where hurricanes or earthquakes or something different would be a factor and whatnot. very interesting conversation too. I wonder, does that conversation come in on the business side too? Thinking about some of those businesses in advanced manufacturing, maybe where they're looking at a region where it snows a lot and says, hey, is this, somewhere where we want to set up a regional hub? Does that climate change story come into play on that side too?
Yeah, definitely. On the business side, it's really like a lack of risk for a company, right? So they're doing different calculations on what risk there is for any environment they're in. You mentioned advanced manufacturing. Obviously, that's capital intense projects. They have really expensive machines and buildings. Data processing companies, again, super expensive equipment that really is key to their business. They want to be in a place where that is the safest that it possibly can be. So a place where there's no earthquakes and hurricanes and tornadoes is actually quite desirable. We're the third safest city in the US from natural disasters. And when, snow gets brought up, we always say snow melts, right? And we're back to work really the next day. So snow is not a natural disaster. And some companies actually like our climate and weather because it presents just a lower level of risk for a big investment that they're choosing to make by relocating their company.
And like you said there, the snow melts. That it definitely, we're fortunate to live in a city that's really well prepared for events like that. And obviously last year's blizzard was one of extreme proportions, but in general, the snow that we're seeing every year, it's good to be able to navigate some of those, just kind of understand what comes. Here we are talking a lot about snow. Thanks to Allison Camp from Lighthouse for tuning in here. Don't want to jinx it. Still hasn't snowed where it sticks to the ground yet here. I think Allison's hoping we can wait a little bit on the snow, and maybe we're reverse jinxing it. Maybe we're talking about the snow and we'll keep it away. So
it's like 60 degrees out right now. So
feeling great.
Yeah.
Love it. Thinking about some of these, companies that are coming to the region in Buffalo. Mentioned it a little bit in the intro here, Greg, and would love to dig in a little bit on this. There's some big news recently that a number of cities and regions across the country were named as federally designated tech hubs, which is a really exciting thing too, because that opens a lot of conversations and, different funding, different types of companies that we might want to be attracting to the region. What have you seen from your team at Invest Buffalo Niagara and what that could mean for a city like Buffalo?
Yeah, I think that kind of mega region, as we call it, collaboration is key when you're trying to land, especially really big projects, or, in the tech hub case, really kind of become a new hub for the semiconductor industry at large. You think about, Buffalo Niagara, the 8 counties that we represent, has 21 colleges and universities. We graduate 25,000 students every single year from those colleges and universities, which is a big number and really strong. Mm-hmm. But you start to add in U of R and RIT and Syracuse University, and those numbers become a lot bigger, and that's a huge talent pool that companies coming to the area would be able to pull from. And really, you think about the commute times you can get from Buffalo to Rochester in an hour in some of these really huge cities that are highly congested. You can move, a few blocks in that same time. So it's really not, the geography seems quite wide when we start to talk about this, but if you really think about the numbers and how transferable all the regions are, it becomes a really compelling case. To us, kind of, it's that rising tide lifts all boats. And if upstate New York is winning, we know that we can all win. In the semiconductor and tech hub designation specifically, there's the huge, fabrication centers, but there's also a ton of supply chain parts and companies that all funnel up into that. And I think there's room kind of along this I-90 corridor that we're talking about through the tech hub designation for a really strong, business case for those type of companies as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very closely connected region too, and I think that's gonna create some opportunities too. At the annual meeting I mentioned yesterday, there was an interesting stat of, I guess the number 70,000 people who live in either the greater metro area around Buffalo or Rochester or Syracuse and commute to a job in one of those other regions. Definitely very accessible and creates some opportunities for employers looking at those areas.
Yeah, people don't realize how easy it really is to get from one to the other. Like I said, Tom, our president and CEO, always talks about when he was living in DC, he would go, whatever his story is, 13 miles in an hour. And here he can get to Rochester, and which is 70 miles in the same amount of time. So
Yeah.
it really is kind of that larger mega region that kind of can all play together and collaborate and, hopefully all win.
Yeah. And then on the other side of that too is there's going to be a lot of local talent that's going to be able to go into those types of tech jobs. There's going to be people who might be coming from larger cities looking for a different change in quality of life and just kind of a different pace, and might want to come to a company like this. But I wanted to ask your perspective too on, there's also a lot of opportunity for workforce development initiatives. Thinking about a place like Northland Workforce Training Center that's training people on Buffalo's east side. I know there's lots of organizations out there that work with refugees, and Buffalo being a big refugee city too, and helping them find work in our community too. How much do these types of initiatives between business attraction, between this federal tech hub, how is the city working together to create opportunities for everyone within those projects?
Yeah, I mean, so Buffalo's population and Erie counties really grew for the first time in the 2020 census since the 70s for Erie County and the 50s for the city of Buffalo. So a big part of the reason for that was new Americans, refugees, immigrants to our community. We have that kind of welcoming, city of good neighbors type of vibe. So really it's our job to help get them acclimated to the new community they're in. And then to your point, create different on-ramps into the workforce that they can progress from, not just getting that first job, but getting the second one, creating, a family sustaining wage. And like you said, through the Northland Workforce Training Center or the International Institute or, Goodwill, so many different organizations that exist to try and help these individuals, like I said, get kind of an on-ramp into the resurgence that we're all feeling here in Buffalo, and a lot of these new jobs that are being created, whether it's in, the semiconductor industry as this tech hub designation continues to progress, a lot of the advanced and clean energy projects that are happening across the city of Buffalo and kind of the region at large. So I think it's obviously a huge win for our community, something we need to continue to double down on and be, really live that mantra of the city of good neighbors to its fullest extent and continue to earn it every single day, because it'll only provide, better benefits for Western New York.
Exactly. That's there was a quote I heard in the 43 North finals this year in the intro video talking about stacking the wins. And as the city, receives more opportunities, it creates the engagement where people can see what's happening here, creates more opportunities, more employers coming here, more workforce developers stepping up, really making sure that all the efforts stay organized and supporting everyone is going to be big moving forward. So I appreciate the fact that we could touch on that for a little bit. Thanks, Greg. Let's see here. We got another comment coming in here from LinkedIn. Oh, Brenda's chiming in from Lighthouse. Thanks, Brenda. Love the Buffalo's about the attitude, not the latitude. Share with people that Brenda's an import to this wonderful city. Originally thinking she'd give it a try for a year, and 12 years later, she's still here. And I know Brenda's down in the snow band and loves the lake effect snow. And she's definitely enjoying that South Sounds life. So thanks, Brenda, for joining. Appreciate you tuning in today as well.
That's awesome. Thank you.
That's really an interesting point too, because we see a lot of people, Greg, who come to Buffalo from other parts of the country, but there's also a ton of people who are those kind of boomerangs that I know you're always talking about, or the people who grew up in Buffalo, moved away either for college or for work and started their lives outside of Buffalo, and then get to a point where they're, ready to start a family, maybe change pace a little bit. And they're coming back here. And just anecdotally, it feels like for me, working downtown, feels like there's a real rise in those type of boomerang people coming back to Buffalo. Is that something you've noticed as well?
Yeah, definitely. So we did in 2020, as part of the Be in Buffalo initiative, we did a newcomer survey to try and just get a lot of data about who's moving here, what their motivations were, what they feel like they need here locally to support them in the move. The biggest demographic of people that answered the survey were people moving back with their first child or, expecting or planning to have a child soon. So, we know that kind of expat demo, the people that might have grew up here or went to college here, they have an affinity for the region. Like we talked about earlier, right? You need to be here in some ways to understand how special of a place it can be. And they might have left at a time where they didn't feel that there was an opportunity there here for them. And there were times, candidly, when that was true. That's certainly not the case anymore through Buffalo's renaissance that we've seen over the last 15, 20 years. There's a place here for individuals. There's a ton of open jobs. And it's really being Buffalo's core mission is to talk to those expats. To us, it's the low-hanging fruit of, who's going to move here the easiest, right? Like not everybody, to Brenda's point, I love that she loves the lake effect snow, but not everyone does, right? Not everyone is going to move here, but in theory, people that grew up here are used to it and maybe understand not how bad the snow is. They might be some of the first people that want to move back. They also have family here. They have, their parents, their kids' grandparents here that they want to be close to and get some childcare out of and buy a more affordable house than compared to California or New York City or, some of these mega cities where the costs are extremely high. So that expat, turning them into boomerangs is really kind of our core mission. And I get to talk to so many of them through our work. And it's so interesting to hear the stories and not just of why they came back, but their experience since being back, of how floored they are, how much further along that Buffalo is than they maybe even thought when they made the decision to come back. So, it's a really key demographic for us. And I think it'll be important for our resurgence to keep accelerating, but it's a big reason why it has already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The one word you mentioned in there, Greg, that stood out to me was affinity. And I was thinking about it just because earlier this week, I was having coffee with a high school friend of mine who lives in Ohio. He's built a career for himself down there. He's very civically involved, but he came back to Buffalo this week to check out the city and see what was new. And, was talking to him. And the thing that really stood out to me was that he sees Ohio as a place that he's made a home. He started to get really involved there, but looks at Buffalo as a place where he grew up. He has that affinity. He really, right, feels a deep passion for the region because it's where he grew up. It's where his family is. And that is, like you said, that is really what's powering a lot of this boomerang movement, right? And, I imagine it's a really cool opportunity for people who are looking to come back to all these companies that are moving to Buffalo. That's a cool opportunity then to be able to communicate to them and say, hey, if it's been a while since you've been to Buffalo, this is what you're missing out on. This is what's changed. And that's right where the Be in Buffalo campaign comes in, right?
Yeah, I mean, so we do a campaign with the Bills backers bars called the Be in Buffalo Hometown Touchdown, where we, promote the brand in Bills backers bars and try and talk to these expats, every Sunday during the Bills games or Monday night or Thursday. We got so many primetime games this year. I guess you can't just say Sunday, but as part of it, I got to go to this season Denver and Houston and talk to hundreds of ex-Buffalonians that, are at this bar cheering on the Bills, and they come up to the table and, get some swag. But really what I was most surprised by this year and really, really encouraged by is the questions that I got from individuals that you could tell that they were in the know about Buffalo, right? So I'm getting questions about climate change refuge and about 43 North and, specific company expansions, the Ralph C. Wilson Centennial Park project. Mm-hmm. Like these expats in many cases are super plugged in. They have that affinity for Buffalo. They have that, love for it. They have family here. So they still have at least some skin in the game. And it's a really common refrain that I've heard is, I'll be back. It might be a matter of when, but it's not a matter of if. At some point, these people are going to come back and call Buffalo home, and hopefully for a long time. So it's our job to continue to talk to them, continue to make the case, attract the companies that have the jobs that they can get, and really kind of package it all together and make a compelling argument.
Yeah, making that compelling argument for them to move back. And then it's just a matter of keeping the flywheel going of bringing new businesses and new job opportunities to Buffalo too. So those people have a chance to move back to Buffalo. So really incredible to see how that work all comes together, Greg, and whatnot with Invest Buffalo Niagara and Be in Buffalo. As we start bringing this home here, just curious, obviously we're coming up on the end of the year and the start of 2024. Are there any kind of trends or big campaigns or ideas that you're looking forward to for the next year?
Yeah, on the Be in Buffalo side, that hometown touchdown campaign that I just talked about, we'll be pulling a winner soon and have somebody, an expat from out of town, coming home for a weekend here in Buffalo where they get, flights, airfare, hotel stay, and tickets to a Bills game. So they get to kind of experience the full Buffalo weekend. So that'll be in December for us, which I'm super excited about. On the business attraction side, we talked a ton already about the tech hub designation, but I think there's a lot of work going into the phase 2 of that application and really kind of mapping out our strengths in the supply or in the semiconductor industry at large, talking about, locations where these companies could go, the supply chain factors that feed up into it. And then the other kind of larger trend that we see on the business attraction side is just these clean energy projects that continue to be interested in Western New York for the climate reasons, for our hydropower from Niagara Falls. So I think you see that trend, whether it's a clean energy company specifically or just a company setting kind of their corporate goals to work towards a cleaner, company for themselves. But we see a lot of opportunity there for our organization across, battery storage or solar, wind, whatever it might be. So I think those are some of the high level trends that we're working on.
Nice. It's cool to see what's coming on that cutting edge and can't wait to see what's ahead for the year. Thanks so much for joining us today, Greg, on the show. And last question that we always ask to all our guests, in the spirit of one of our core values here called Be a Lighthouse, that's all about helping people and guiding them to the solutions they need. So wanted to, again, thank you for coming on the show today, but then also give you the chance to shout out someone who's supported you or helped you learn something new lately.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been an awesome time. Been super looking forward to it. You do a great job on this show, with all of your guests. So it's important to telling the story of Buffalo, and you're obviously a big part of that. So appreciate you. 2 individuals I wanted to call out, 2 really strong mentors of mine over the years. Jenna Kavanaugh from National Grid, who's been an incredible mentor to me for 6 going on 7 years. Wouldn't be probably on the show with you without her. So very appreciative of her. And then a buddy and mentor of mine, Royce Woods, who we graduated Leadership Buffalo with together in 2019 and have kept, really close as friends and also kind of as a mentor figure for my career. So shout out those 2 people as big influences in my career and personal life for sure.
Yeah, love it. 2 rock stars right there. And shout out to Jenna and Royce. And that's a great note to end it on. Greg, thanks so much. And if people are interested in finding out more about Invest Buffalo Niagara and Be in Buffalo, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, follow our social media channels. Invest site is buffaloniagara.org. And then Be in Buffalo's is just beinbuffalo.com. So sign up for the newsletters, follow the social media. And really, to me, it's hopefully all of us have some kind of agency and stake in the game and telling Buffalo's story. We all have audiences online. And I think if we're all kind of singing from the same song sheet and cheerleading the region in the ways that we all know that it deserves to be promoted, it'll be better for all of us. So I encourage everybody to get involved and kind of share the good work for sure.
Love it. Great. Thanks so much, Greg. And thanks everyone for tuning in, and hope you have a great weekend.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.